Hat, sunglasses, Pepsi, notes, sources, thick skin. Check. You already know. Let's go. Golden Blooded is a college football YouTube channel for entertainment. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get into our next college football video. Don't forget to send gear to represent your team. The address is P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina 29657. Yeah. Well. Here we are, late January, and still no Big 12 football schedule for the 2023 football season. Why is that? Well, it's because Oklahoma and Texas are still trying to get out even earlier. We're talking as early as next season. And I know there's a lot of legalities in it, like both schools have to give an 18 months notice before their last day, I guess, and it's well past that. But I'm hearing that there are negotiations behind the scenes for Oklahoma and Texas to leave even earlier. Now, both sides have something to gain from this. A lot of people don't know this, but Oklahoma and Texas, they do not want to play BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF. They don't want to play those four teams. That is a fact. They do not want to play those four teams. Another fun fact is that all the Big 12 teams took a cut so that those four teams could come into the Big 12. In other words, they didn't add money, and the rest of the conference had to take a cut. So the rest of the conference definitely wants them in. So there's actually a motive for the Big 12 themselves to get Oklahoma and Texas out as soon as possible because of more money. We're talking around 168 million total. That's a lot of money. That would make up for that cut that all of these teams are taking to bring in those four teams. And that 168 million would go to the 8 teams. Not BYU, not Cincinnati, not Houston, not UCF. So there are motives on both sides of the aisle as far as Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12 sooner rather than later. Now, I'm hearing that the schedule is supposed to come out in February. This has turned into a situation where a lot of people are on pins and needles. If Oklahoma and Texas don't leave even earlier, then those teams aren't going to get as much money. So that pay cut's going to hurt just a little bit more. Now, they're still going to get money. That's going to make up for that pay cut. But if they can get Oklahoma and Texas out even earlier, they're going to get even more money. And they're not even losing money at all. They're going to be beyond breaking even. They're going to gain back what they're losing from the cut and then some. So there's motives on both sides of the aisle as far as getting rid of Oklahoma and Texas sooner rather than later. And I say getting rid of, but really it's Oklahoma and Texas. They also want to leave early as well. So it's both sides. So the interesting thing is, when the Big 12 schedule does come out, will we see Oklahoma and Texas on that Big 12 schedule? Another thing that's getting worked out is the Big 12 wants future out-of-conference games with Texas and Oklahoma, and they want those games to be played on Big 12 campuses, not including BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF, because Texas and Oklahoma don't want to play those four teams. So the provision would be Texas and Oklahoma play those other 8 teams. We're talking about West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor, Kansas, Kansas State. Those 8 teams, those are the teams that would host either Oklahoma and or Texas in the future for out-of-conference games. That would help the Big 12 make even more money for the out-of-conference, and it would boost up their strength of schedule. So there's still a lot of negotiations going on behind the scenes, and that's why the schedule's not out just yet. So when it does come out, does Texas and Oklahoma stay for the next 2 years? And if they do, they would have to play those 4 teams or a combination of those 4 teams, and they don't want to do that. So I'm thinking that the chances of Oklahoma and Texas leaving early are pretty high. I think they're higher than the chances of them staying for another 2 to 3 years. I really, really do. Another question is, how does Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU feel about this? How do they feel about Oklahoma and Texas not wanting to play them? And how do they feel about the money that the Big 12 would be getting for an early exit going to the other 8 teams and not those 4 teams? Well, I'm sure they're a little upset about that, but at the same time, they're in the Big 12. I'm sure that they knew that going into the Big 12. Hey, guys, we want you in the Big 12. But here are a few things you need to know. First of all, Texas, Oklahoma, they don't want to play you. Second of all, there's a chance that Texas and Oklahoma could be out before y'all even join or before y'all even play a single game in the Big 12. And whatever money we get from them leaving even earlier is not going to go to you guys. So I'm sure all of that was in the negotiations and they knew that going into that. But still, there's still got to be a little bit of feelings of resentment, not liking Oklahoma and Texas even more than they didn't before. Make no mistake about it, Texas and Oklahoma will be headed to the SEC by 2025. That's a fact. No way of getting around that. The question is, do they leave even sooner than that? Do they not even play one more Big 12 conference game? That's another question. And another thing that's kind of baffling is if that does happen, see, the SEC, they actually do already have their schedules out. So would they have to redo their schedules? That's something you got to think about as well. And how does the SEC feel about Oklahoma and Texas leaving even earlier and having to redo their schedule? And what about the money situation? Is this coming out of the pockets of just Texas and Oklahoma? Or is the SEC chipping in? And who all is involved in the negotiations? Is ESPN involved? Is it just Texas and Oklahoma? Is the SEC involved? Who all is involved in these negotiations? And who is going to be chipping in to pay for their exit fee? Because make no mistake about it, there will be an exit fee. The question is, how much? Based on when Texas and Oklahoma decide to actually leave. Is there another penalty? Because that 18-month notice, that is long past. They are past that. They would have to stay another 2 seasons if that 18-month notice was enforced strictly. So that thing is done past and gone as far as them leaving even earlier. Is there an even bigger fine or a bigger fee for them not giving an 18-month notice if they do leave by 2023? Now, I have heard, and I actually did a video a few days ago or a week ago, something like that. Time starts running in together. Anyways, I did a video a while back about how the Big 12 has already set up a way to where Oklahoma and Texas does play everybody rotating. But that was before I knew about them not wanting to play the 4 teams coming in. And it would include those 4 teams. And it would guarantee that everybody in the new Big 12 would play Oklahoma and Texas at least once. It doesn't guarantee that everybody would play them at home. Some of them would get them on the road. Let's say one year somebody gets to play Oklahoma at home. The next year, yes, they would get to play Texas, but it would be on the road. So I have heard about that situation as well. So if Oklahoma and Texas were to stay an extra 2 years, they would be playing everybody even though they don't want to play those 4 teams. Maybe that's just too much. Maybe they're sticking to their principles on that one. No, we do not want to play those 4 teams. And if you're going to make us play those 4 teams, we want out even earlier. Was that a part of the negotiations, bringing in those 4 teams? Hey, if you bring those 4 teams, we're not playing them. I don't care how you do the schedule, we're not playing them. So a lot is going into this, and it's very, very interesting to see exactly what happens. So we might be hearing an announcement about Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC in 2023, and then we'll see the Big 12 schedule released based on the remaining 12 teams instead of the 14 teams. So maybe there is not going to be any overlap between the 4 teams coming in and Oklahoma and Texas going out. Another crazy situation going on in the Big 12. And like I said earlier, both sides have something to gain from this. Oklahoma and Texas don't want to play those 4 teams, so they went out earlier. And of course, the Big 12 wants that money, and the teams in the Big 12 want that money to make up for the pay cut that they took for bringing in those 4 teams. So y'all let me know in the comment section. Number 1, do you think Texas and Oklahoma is out before 2023? Number 2, if they're not, do you think they'll still end up playing those 4 teams that they do not want to play? Number 3, who do you think chips in to pay for their exit fee? Will this just be on the shoulders of Oklahoma and Texas, or will ESPN and the SEC chip in to help them get out even earlier? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.